Instantly claiming central territory, this pawn thrust opens crucial diagonals for both queen and king's bishop, setting the stage for active piece play and immediate strategic engagement. Mirroring the central pawn immediately establishes symmetry and fights for equality in space. A daring gambit, sacrificing pawn integrity for rapid central assault, immediately inviting tactical fireworks. Opening the f-file offers attacking chances, but exposes your king. Developing a knight here immediately contests the center and prepares for castling, putting pressure on black's potentially exposed king. Opening the d-file for the queen, and preparing to challenge white's central influence with the bishop. Aggressively seizing central space, this move challenges black's king-pawn and opens lines for future attacks. A bold gambit, sacrificing pawn structure for a potential kingside attack, but it opens your own monarch to dangerous exposure. Opening the h-file aggressively, white aims to expose black's king to immediate danger. Launching a pawn thrust like this into enemy territory, while potentially gaining space, dramatically compromises your king's safety by opening critical diagonal lines. Retreating the knight to its starting square concedes the initiative and surrenders valuable central space for no apparent compensation. Opening a vital diagonal for the bishop, black aggressively pushes for kingside initiative, though potentially weakening their own monarch. Unlocking diagonal pressure, this bishop bolsters the kingside, preparing for a swift central push. Establishing bishop influence and preparing for castling offers vital defensive fortification. Shifting the bishop to this square prepares for a potential queenside pawn push, while simultaneously offering some breathing room for your king. Developing the knight to a central outpost begins to challenge white's king safety and control key squares. Developing the knight to c3 aims to contest the center and prepare for queenside expansion, while simultaneously defending the e4 pawn's potential recapture. Unleashing the rook to g8 intends to exploit the open g-file, seeking dynamic counterplay against the white king. Liberating the queen's bishop for central influence offers a vital development boost. The knight embarks on an ambitious journey, aiming to infiltrate white's kingside fortifications. Unleashing the kingside pawn storm, but exposing your own monarch to scrutiny. A daring knight sortie, sacrificing material to penetrate the enemy's pawn shield and target the vulnerable king. Unlocking the h-file for potential infiltration, white aims to challenge black's precarious king's safety amid the pawn storm. Sacrificing a knight for a pawn now opens the kingside dramatically, leaving white's monarch exposed to swift attacks. The king's sudden relocation opens lines, but exposes weaknesses that black can exploit with coordinated pieces. This pawn thrust dramatically opens the g-file, creating immediate attacking prospects against white's exposed king. Opening the g-file for your rook after the exchange dramatically simplifies the position, aiming to exploit the exposed black king. Liberating the bishop from its pawn shell creates attacking possibilities, but leaves your king exposed to white's reorganized attackers. Focusing on king's safety, this move aims to establish a secure pawn chain and prepare for piece development, potentially opening lines for attack. Consolidating the queenside pawn structure and preparing to launch a flank assault, this maneuver subtly shifts the focus of the battle. The queen now joins the attack, aiming to exploit the open lines toward black's weakened king. Unleashing a check across the board, this bishop's diagonal penetration seeks to disrupt the king's nascent safety and create immediate tactical opportunities. Re-establishing a knight in the central fray after the king's relocation offers a semblance of positional recovery. Unlocking the c-file initiates a fierce queenside thrust. Prepare for aggressive maneuvering. Reclaiming the central file with the rook signals a strategic repositioning aimed at greater pressure and potential piece activity. Securing the queen's active involvement, the knight on g3 now offers formidable protection for the monarch. Sacrificing the bishop opens up the g-file directly towards black's somewhat exposed king, creating immediate attacking chances. Unleashing a desperate attack, Black aims to exploit the exposed white king by sacrificing material for initiative. Initiating the king's escape route, this maneuver seeks to sidestep immediate danger and connect the rooks for future defensive efforts. Shifting your king to safety amidst the chaos sets a cautious tone, prioritizing defense as the board opens up. Unleashing the queen for a desperate kingside assault offers little respite from black's looming threats. The rook exchange simplifies the position and immediately puts pressure on white's exposed king. This piece exchange simplifies the position, opening the H-file for your rook and targeting black's exposed monarch. Exposing the white king's sanctuary further, this sacrifice seizes the diagonal and aims to dismantle any lingering safety. Recapturing the bishop decisively clears the H-file, opening it for your rook and aiming to exploit black's exposed king position. Relinquishing the bishop for a pawn after white's rook takes the G3 pawn marks a radical shift in pawn structure, opening lines but leaving your king somewhat exposed. The king's exposed position on the open G-file immediately demands defensive attention, creating a precarious pawn structure. This perpetual check secures a draw by forcing the king into repeated squares, a clever way to escape a lost position. A bold king march into the heart of a messy pawn structure, seeking active counterplay amidst the chaos. A deliberate retreat to consolidate the rook's position and prepare for future pawn advances. Challenging black's central pawn is a necessary step to try and activate white's dormant pieces and open up attacking lines. Penetrating the queenside with the knight aims to disrupt white's pawn structure and create endgame imbalances. Initiating a pawn storm on the queenside to seize open lines and liberate the knight. Shoring up the king's defenses with a pawn wall, this aims to restrict white's pieces and prepare for a counterattack. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure to prevent further black incursions. Pivoting the knight to this active square immediately poses a threat to white's uncastled king and prepares to contest central space. Unlocking the C5 square for your knight, this move aims to disrupt black's central pawn structure. The knight's journey to the queenside begins, aiming to contest the open files and pressure white's weak pawn structure. Consolidating the knight towards the queenside could initiate a positional squeeze. Preparing to seize the open c-file, this knight repositioning aims to exert pressure on white's weakened queenside structure. Repositioning the knight to e3 opens lines for potential pawn advances and seeks better defensive coordination. The bishop now eyes the kingside, preparing to support a potential knight leap. Opening a path for the knight to aggressively penetrate black's position. Initiating a pawn break on the queenside to disrupt white's central control. A king venturing towards the center risks becoming a target in this tense, unbalanced position. Unleashing the knight to the central outpost disrupts white's king safety and creates mating threats. Unleashing the pawn storm now risks overextension, potentially weakening your own king's safety in the coming exchanges. Reactivating the knight's influence on the kingside, aiming to create future attacking opportunities. Opening the c-file initiates a battle for central control, aiming to break black's blockade. The bishop's retreat strategically reclaims influence on the open c-file, aiming to disrupt white's centralized knight and prepare for future pawn advances. Unleashing a knight's potential through a surprising flank maneuver, targeting the weak pawn on f6. Brings the bishop back to safety, creating a potential outpost on e5 for the knight. Exploiting the exposed black king, this capture aims to dismantle white's defensive structure and accelerate the inevitable mating net. Capturing the knight on e6 offers a pawn and temporarily loosens black's central grip, but allows white to activate their rook on the h-file for potential counterplay. Stripping pawns from the central file opens a critical diagonal for your rook, aiming to exploit the opponent's exposed king. The rook's descent aims to disrupt white's d5 pawn and regain some activity on the queenside. Frees the g-pawn for potential offensive action and bolsters central control. The knight repositions, seeking active squares and aiming to disrupt white's entrenched pieces. initiating a decisive attack on the castled king, forcing a king retreat to consolidate gains. Relocating the king to the queenside aims to escape the immediate pawn storm and potentially offer some endgame prospects. Leveraging the open file, this knight aims to initiate a dangerous kingside attack.